It was the 28th day of the lunar calendar, a traditional holiday not far off. The forest had already plunged into darkness, the twilight glow a faint, pale red, like remnants of silk ribbons clinging to the sky. A weak, ethereal light filtered through the ancient trees, transforming the landscape into a desolate scene. Along a narrow, overgrown path, a man trudged, a heavy load of firewood weighing on his shoulders. His breath, a misty plume, escaped into the frigid air, mingling with the pungent, resinous scent of the fresh wood. As he passed a small stream, the man suddenly heard a faint moan. At first, it was just a fleeting, soft sound, but then it grew clearer, more distinct. Focusing, listening intently, the man was startled to realize it was a desperate, gasping breath. He flinched, his brow furrowed, and he looked up. The flickering twilight filtering through the leaves created shifting patterns of light and shadow, casting an eerie gloom over everything. The man set his burden down, pulled out his machete, and cautiously approached the source of the sound. The faint moans led him to a tree leaning precariously over the stream, where the ground beneath was damp and covered in decaying leaves. Just as he reached it, he saw a woman lying face down at the base of the tree. Her thin tunic was soaked in fresh blood, and her body trembled with each weak, shallow breath. The man was utterly shocked, a profound sense of unease rising within him. The faint moans continued, like the cries of a lost soul, making his heart pound. After a moment of stunned silence, the man rushed forward in a panic. The instant he turned over the blood-soaked face, the world before his eyes seemed to darken, and the surrounding landscape spun. A wave of terror immediately washed over him, and a shiver ran down his spine. A day earlier, at the spacious mansion of Mr. Bao's family, the sun was already setting behind the bamboo grove at the edge of the village. It was the 27th day of the lunar calendar, but the atmosphere in Mr. Bao's house was unusually quiet. From the main house to the servants' quarters, from the masters to the workers, everyone moved about discreetly, speaking in hushed tones, unlike ordinary days. It was as if a single strong step could disturb the ancestral spirits of this powerful family. Mr. Bao sat silently on an antique wooden daybed in the center of the house, leaning against an embroidered cushion, his hands clasped over his belly, his mind restless. This newfound anxiety had only recently appeared in Mr. Bao's heart. More precisely, it began the day he heard that his eldest son's career path had hit a snag. Mr. Bao had 3 sons. The eldest, a young man who aspired to a high official position, had encountered an unexpected obstacle. His path, once so promising, had suddenly stalled. The second son, who served as an administrative officer under General Tran Ka, had inexplicably been demoted. And the youngest, the son Mr. Bao had poured all his hopes into, a child who had shown remarkable intelligence from a young age, inexplicably struggled with his examinations. Though not a superstitious man, Mr. Bao found himself pacing late into the night, lost in thought. He was convinced that something was amiss with his ancestors' graves. Sitting beside him, Mrs. Bao quietly turned her prayer beads, murmuring Buddhist chants, but her eyes occasionally darted towards the courtyard, anxiously awaiting the arrival of the geomancer. For the past month, Mrs. Bao had sighed endlessly, fearing that the family's prosperity, built over so many years, would suddenly slip from their grasp, like river water flowing through her fingers. Her family's wealth was immense, spanning villages and districts, countless fertile lands and houses all under her control. But all this tangible wealth paled in comparison to the importance of connections within the official bureaucracy. Without someone in the government, all the accumulated riches would be like a castle built on sand. As the couple sat in somber silence, a figure approached the gate. It was an elderly man with graying hair and beard, slender but with deep, cold eyes, as if accustomed to witnessing the life and death of human beings. "Has the master arrived?" Mrs. Bao murmured softly. The geomancer, dressed in a dark brown traditional robe, wearing wooden clogs and leaning on a walking stick weathered by time, stepped into the courtyard. He paused, his gaze sweeping across Mr. Bao's estate. Mr. Bao quickly rose and hastened to greet the geomancer, a smile on his face that couldn't quite hide his anxiety. After exchanging a few polite words, Mr. Bao asked his servants to prepare a ceremonial tray and then requested the geomancer to examine his late father's grave, fearing that further delay would only deepen his unease. The geomancer watched the servants busily arranging the offerings, then looked at Mr. Bao and said, "There's no need to rush this matter. Your family's ancestral lines require careful handling. It cannot be hurried or forced. It's never too late to go at the auspicious hour." After sharing a pot of tea, the geomancer stood up and asked Mr. Bao to lead the way. The path to the village cemetery wound through a barren field. The sun had dipped low, casting a golden hue, and low-hanging gray clouds imbued the landscape with a melancholic tranquility. The group followed in silence, no one daring to utter a word. Besides the rustling of the wind, only the geomancer's wooden clogs clacked softly on the dirt path, each sound echoing ominously in everyone's hearts. Mr. Bao's late father's grave lay on a small mound of earth, overgrown with wild grass. In front of the tomb stood an incense burner bristling with countless joss sticks. The geomancer placed his staff aside, slowly took out his compass, and bent down, measuring each direction, every inch of the ground. He circled the grave with deliberate, unhurried steps, occasionally pausing for a long moment, closing his eyes as if listening to the breath of the earth and sky. Mr. Bao and his wife stood hidden behind him, not daring to speak. A chilly wind swept across the field, carrying the rustle of dry grass. In that moment, Mr. Bao felt his heart sink. He quietly recalled the early years when he first rose to prominence through trade, skillfully forging connections with influential people to build his empire. All his past glories, he had thought, were due to his own talent. But now, standing before this grave, he suddenly understood that some things, no matter how much you wish to keep them, simply couldn't be held onto. After a thorough examination, the geomancer stood upright, casually brushing off the soil clinging to his robe. His voice, slow and deliberate, began to speak, each word carefully chosen. "Mr. Bao, this grave is situated precisely on the dragon's vein, a place of ancestral energy. It has a bright hall in front and a calm mountain behind, so it is not afflicted by any malevolent forces. The orientation of the grave is perfectly aligned with the heavenly doctor position, a protective influence that brings blessings and peace to descendants. Your family's prosperity today, your abundant wealth and successful children, all owe themselves to the support of this ancestral burial site." Mr. Bao had barely had time to rejoice when the geomancer continued. "However, the auspicious energy of this grave has been fully expressed. Your family's current prosperity has reached its peak. Any attempt to reorient the grave to seek more wealth will not only fail, but will disturb the dragon's vein, turning blessings into misfortune. Mr. Bao, your family has already flourished significantly. If the yang, worldly affairs path is not thriving, it is surely due to the hearts of men and the actions of your own descendants." This statement struck Mr. Bao like a splash of cold water. He stood motionless, his hands unconsciously clenching. Mrs. Bao, standing behind him, let out a soft sigh. The geomancer looked at the couple for a long moment, then spoke again. "Mr. Bao, instead of worrying about the grave's orientation, I believe you should consider cultivating virtue and doing good deeds. Your ancestors' blessings have provided enough. The rest depends on your descendants' conduct. As the head of the household, you should accumulate good karma by helping others and lessen your desire for things beyond what is rightfully yours. A person must maintain an honest heart and not sow discord for immediate gain. Only then can your good fortune be preserved. Otherwise, no matter how auspicious the grave, it cannot save you." With that, the geomancer clasped his hands before the grave, offered a few brief prayers, and then gathered his belongings. Before leaving, he gave one final instruction. "The ancestral spirits are at peace. Your family should not disturb this place again. Let the deceased rest in peace, and only then can the living hope for stability. Heaven has determined the extent of one's blessings. If a person does not know when to stop, even what they possess will be difficult to keep. Farewell, Mr. and Mrs. Bao, I must take my leave." The geomancer's figure gradually disappeared down the road, shrouded in the evening mist. The couple stood there, watching until he was completely out of sight. The unease in Mr. Bao's heart had not vanished. Instead, it had transformed into a deeper, heavier sensation. From that day on, dinner consisted of 7 dishes, but Mr. Bao barely touched a few. He stood up and walked out onto the veranda. Mrs. Bao watched her husband's retreating figure, her heart restless. The geomancer's words from the afternoon echoed in her ears, like a slow, insistent knock on an old door. The sky darkened quickly, and a sudden strong gust of wind made the betel nut palms rustle mysteriously, as if whispering secrets. Mr. Bao stood by a wooden pillar, eyes lost in the distance. Mrs. Bao spoke, trying to keep her words from offending her husband's pride. My dear, the geomancer's words do have some merit. Our ancestors' blessings have provided enough. Now, we should know when to stop. Perhaps our family should focus on doing good deeds, practicing charity, and helping the poor in the village to accumulate more blessings so that our children can enjoy prosperity for longer. Our eldest son's career path may be slow, but it will surely be stable. She sighed, her eyes filled with sorrow, like someone standing at the top of a cliff, unsure if her husband would heed her warning to stop. Mr. Bao spun around, waving his hand impatiently, his voice sharper than usual, as if all the accumulated frustration from the afternoon now found an outlet. What nonsense are you talking about? You've been my wife, a daughter-in-law in this esteemed family, so you should know better than anyone. Do you know what I have done for this village for decades? Mr. Bao continued to hiss, his voice laced with venom. From the day this family prospered, it was I who paid to renovate the village communal house, who provided funds every Tet holiday, who hired workers to build roads and dig irrigation canals. Every year of poor harvest, I opened our granary to distribute rice. Countless people in this village survived starvation thanks to my family, and now you tell me I lack virtue. You tell me I need to be charitable and benevolent, as if I'm a heartless person who only cares about myself. Mrs. Bao clasped her hands, twisting her robes, not daring to argue, knowing there was nothing more to say. Having been Mr. Bao's wife for so many years, she understood her husband's temper. Speaking more now would only add fuel to the fire. But a nagging doubt lingered in her heart, for she knew that many of the good deeds her husband recounted were often done for reputation, for show, rather than from a truly pure heart. Mr. Bao paused, as if satisfied that his words were potent enough, then let out a cold huff. He waved his hand dismissively and walked back into the house. His heavy footsteps echoed on the tiled floor, leaving Mrs. Bao's silent figure behind. She looked up at the ancestral altar, where the smoke from the incense still curled upwards, and a sudden sense of unease welled up within her. Darkness descended swiftly. In the spacious, well-appointed chamber, Mr. Bao lay on his elaborately carved wooden bed. He draped his arm over his forehead, staring fixedly at the ceiling. Outside, the night wind still whistled, and the distant barks of dogs echoed periodically. Mr. Bao sat in silent contemplation for a while, then wearily closed his eyes, but the geomancer's words and his wife's advice intertwined, replaying in his mind. Mr. Bao's thoughts drifted to his 3 sons. The eldest, struggling through several examinations, had only just entered the bureaucracy. His path was long, but its initial turns seemed unfavorable. He now imagined painstakingly hiring a master geomancer to reorient the grave. Yet deep down, Mr. Bao didn't entirely believe in matters of fate. After a long period of tossing and turning, Mr. Bao turned to look at Mrs. Bao. In the flickering oil lamplight, her face appeared weary, marked by fatigue. He let out a sigh, his voice softer than the evening breeze. Don't worry about the grave, dear. The master said it's settled, so the ancestral spirits are at peace. And as for the children, I will handle it myself. Mrs. Bao turned to her husband, her heart a mix of relief and worry. Mr. Bao continued, Now, my dear, listen. This Tet, I plan to invite 10 high-ranking officials from the provincial capital to celebrate with us. They were once my colleagues and friends during my humble days. It will be a way to strengthen our relationships. On that occasion, I will also ask them to support our eldest son. In officialdom, you need influential people to lend a hand. If you have the door but don't knock, it's a wasted opportunity. At this, Mrs. Bao's heart constricted in her chest. She was a woman of humble origins but sharp wit. She understood one thing clearly. The higher the rank, the heavier the debt of gratitude. If not repaid skillfully, it would turn into a burden. She wanted to advise him further, but seeing her husband's expression, she held her tongue. Mr. Bao was silent for a moment, then gave a cynical smile. The master told me to accumulate virtue and do good deeds. That doesn't mean sitting idly and waiting for fate. Our family doesn't commit wicked acts, we are simply paving the way for our children. As for the Tet feast, we will host them meticulously. That's a matter of etiquette, nothing wrong with that. And regarding their support, if our son has talent and ability, a helping hand is only natural. Mrs. Bao listened, her heart heavy as stone. She turned away, adjusting the bedding to hide a prolonged sigh. Deep down, she knew that at this moment, their family's path was diverging. It was no longer about graves or dragons' veins, but about the hearts of men and the silent machinations of the earthly realm. The next morning, the 28th day of the 12th lunar month, before the children were even awake, Mr. Bao rose early and opened the heavy limb wood door. He walked briskly into his private study and took out a sheet of elegant paper. Spreading it on the desk, Mr. Bao began to grind an ink stick and personally wrote letters of invitation to the officials. He carefully weighed each word, maintaining the dignity of a wealthy landlord while subtly conveying his hope for their patronage without being overtly obvious. Once finished, Mr. Bao reread the letters several times, nodding with satisfaction, before instructing a servant to stamp them with his seal and deliver them promptly along the official road. Throughout this time, a sense of anticipation lingered in Mr. Bao's heart. During the day, he attended to his ledgers, cordially received guests, and personally dealt with land disputes and debt collection. Yet, whenever he had a free moment, his gaze would unconsciously drift towards the gate, as if hoping to catch sight of the messenger's return. At night, Mr. Bao lay awake, listening to every dog bark from outside the alley, wondering if the officials would accept his invitation, if they would truly value it, or merely regard it as a polite tete greeting. Mrs. Bao watched her husband silently. She understood that after the visit to the grave, Mr. Bao outwardly seemed to have dismissed the matter of ancestral spirits, but inwardly he was becoming increasingly restless. His son's career path had become an obsession. By late afternoon that day, the servant he had sent to invite the officials returned. Seeing the red-sealed envelope in the servant's hand, Mr. Bao sprang to his feet, his heart pounding. He tore open the letter immediately, in front of everyone. After reading just the first few lines, the corners of his mouth turned up, his eyes shining as if he had struck gold. "The official has accepted, my dear. He says he will visit our house on the first day of the new year to commemorate the beginning of spring and discuss old matters." That alone was enough to make Mr. Bao tremble with joy. He carefully folded the letter and instructed a servant to reward the messenger handsomely. The entire household, upstairs and downstairs, suddenly bustled with activity. Mr. Bao immediately set to work. He personally planned the elaborate rituals and offerings to be presented to his ancestors, ensuring they were worthy of his family's status, and arranged the feast for the officials with meticulous detail. On the other hand, he urged the servants to thoroughly clean and decorate the house, from the main hall to the side wings. Every corner had to be spotless and bright. The calligraphic plaques and couplets were taken down, cleaned, and polished until they gleamed, reflecting the oil lamp light. In the courtyard, Mr. Bao had new ornamental plants brought in, arranging the kumquat and peach trees to be perfectly balanced, ensuring that the stone garden path was neat and tidy, leaving no spot unsightly for the officials. Even the small path leading from the village gate to his house was resurfaced, flattened to prevent any potholes that might cause an unlucky stumble for the officials' palanquin on New Year's Day. In the kitchen, the hearth glowed red from early morning. The tete dishes were prepared with even more care than usual. Among these rare and exquisite delicacies, Mr. Bao specifically instructed that one dish be prepared with exceptional skill and taste: the pickled fermented mustard greens *du mieux for tete. Mr. Bao remembered vividly that the official, in his youth, came from a poor family whose parents used to sell pickled onions. In those days, before Mr. Bao became prosperous, he had sometimes bought pickled onions from the official's family for tete. The crisp, tangy flavor had stayed with him for years. Remembering it now was both a fond memory and a thread that could potentially sway a person's heart. Mr. Bao told his wife, "My dear, this time, you absolutely must make the best, most authentic pickled mustard greens, so that when the official eats it, he remembers his humble origins. That way, our family's fortunes will be smoother." Mrs. Bao flinched slightly but nodded, instructing the servants to follow his orders. Each onion was carefully selected, all small, firm, and pearly white, then salted with coarse sea salt and sun-dried. When boiling the brine, Mrs. Bao was told to let it cool completely before soaking the onions. The pickled greens were thoroughly washed, air-dried, then buried in cool, shaded ground, following the traditional method. Mr. Bao even personally inspected the pickle jar, repeating instructions to ensure the timing was precise: not too early, not too late, so that the pickles would be perfectly ripe when the official arrived. As evening descended, the atmosphere in Mr. Bao's house remained bustling. Servants ran back and forth, some preparing offerings, others husking rice, some polishing bronzeware. The rhythmic pounding of rice cakes, the crisp slicing of vegetables, mingled with the sounds of people calling out to each other. Mr. Bao paced the courtyard, his hands clasped behind his back, occasionally nodding in approval, occasionally gesturing sharply when something wasn't to his liking. After a while, Mr. Bao returned to the main house and looked at the ancestral offerings already laid out. A complex feeling welled up in his heart, a mix of eagerness and trepidation. He believed that the first day of the new year, with the high-ranking official present, with the elaborate feast, and especially with the pickled mustard greens that evoked humble origins, would be a turning point for his family. Outside, the evening wind swept through the beetle nut garden, making the leaves rustle together. Beneath the ground, the pickled onions lay silently, waiting for the day they would be unearthed. A Tet celebration that not only held the flavors of traditional sweets, but also the scent of calculation and human ambition. Another quarter hour passed as the sun had already dipped behind the bamboo grove at the edge of the village. Mr. Bao was leisurely sipping tea when a servant rushed over, whispered in his ear, and then retreated. "Master, Track the carpenter from the village sent a messenger. He's commemorating the death anniversary of his wife and has prepared a humble meal. He invites you to share a cup of wine, showing his respect." Mr. Bao hesitated. Track the carpenter was just a village artisan, skilled in his craft, but of a common, humble status. Normally, Mr. Bao rarely attended such modest meals. Yet he recalled that Track had done many jobs for his family over the years, from repairing the altar and building daybeds to constructing the side wings, never once overcharging or skimping on materials. Moreover, Mr. Bao's heart was currently light with hope, and he felt more generous. So he nodded, told the servant to prepare his robe, and leisurely set off. Old Man Track's house was tucked away by the village pond, a modest three-bay structure with a low roof. In front, a sparse beetle nut tree stood, its leaves no longer vibrant green but a dull, silver gray. As Mr. Bao stepped into the courtyard, the mingled scents of incense smoke and wood wafted from the main house. Inside, the altar for Track's deceased wife was arranged against the wall, joss sticks glowing red, flickering against her faded portrait. A few neighbors were also present, attending the memorial feast. As Mr. Bao entered, everyone respectfully bowed and greeted him. Track the carpenter quickly stepped forward. "Ah, Master Bao, I didn't expect you to grace our humble home. Today is my wife's death anniversary, so I prepared a simple meal and some light wine." "Please, Master Bao, make yourself comfortable." Mr. Bao nodded, humbly taking a seat on the elevated daybed. He cast his eyes around, feeling a slight surprise. The ceremonial dishes were neatly arranged on an old but clean wooden table. There were no exquisite delicacies, just a few familiar household dishes: a plate of boiled sliced pork, a bowl of mustard green soup, a dish of dark braised fish, and a plate of pickled onions. Mr. Bao had just sat down when his attention was drawn to these pickled onions. The onions on the plate were not large, but uniformly small, some pure white, others with a faint purple hue. What was especially striking was the clear pickling brine, completely free of film or pungent odor. Under the oil lamp's glow, the onions emitted a gentle, inviting sheen, looking clean and refreshing. Track then immediately poured wine, raising his cup to invite Mr. Bao. "Sir, we are poor folk with only a few rustic dishes. Please, Master Bao, partake of our meal." Mr. Bao took a sip of wine, nodded in polite acknowledgement, then reached out and picked up a pickled onion, placing it in his mouth. As he chewed, he was somewhat astonished. The onion was perfectly crisp beneath his teeth, neither soft nor mealy, its tanginess balanced perfectly with the hint of sweet wine on his tongue, and its mild, almost unnoticeable spiciness. It left a strange, refreshing, and aromatic sensation. Mr. Bao chewed slowly, his expression thoughtful, as if contemplating something important. Gapping a second onion, then a third, he finally set down his chopsticks and turned to Old Man Track. "Truly, what kind of pickled onions are these? They're so different. I've eaten countless pickled onions before, but none have ever tasted like this." Track the carpenter flinched slightly, his eyes showing a hint of apprehension as he lowered his head, his voice soft. "Oh, it's just pickled onions, sir. Thank you for not disliking them." Mr. Bao gave a faint smile and shook his head. "Don't be so modest. Pickled onions that are this crisp and not pungent, with clear brine and no film, means the person who pickled them is no ordinary artisan. Even in my own house, where we've been pickling onions for over 10 years, we might not be able to achieve this. Hearing Mr. Bao's words, Old Man Track became visibly flustered. He rubbed his bushy mustache and replied slowly, "Well, Master Bao, since you asked, I won't hide it. Honestly, these are ancestral pickled onions. My grandfather passed the recipe to my father to me, and now I keep it. The method is a little different from others, which is why the taste is also different." Mr. Bao raised his eyebrows, his eyes gleaming with interest. Ancestral pickled onions, you say? No wonder they taste so unique, but what's different about them? Tell me, I'd like to hear. Track the carpenter quickly shook his head and gave a forced smile. Ah, Master Bao, please forgive me. My ancestors instructed that the secret only be passed down within the family, so I dare not reveal it to outsiders. That answer annoyed Mr. Bao somewhat, but he managed to compose himself. He picked up another onion, put it in his mouth, chewed slowly, then spoke in a serious tone. I'm not asking for it for free. If you tell me, I can offer you a suitable reward. Track the carpenter flinched, quickly waving his hands. Oh no, I wouldn't dare. Money is not the issue. It's just my ancestors' instructions, and I dare not disobey them. Mr. Bao looked at Old Man Track for a long time. In that moment, he remembered the official's upcoming Tet visit. He recalled his own words, having instructed Mrs. Bao to make the best pickled mustard greens to curry favor with the official. This kind of pickled onion, if presented to the official, would surely be worth more than 100 flattering words. Mr. Bao put down his wine cup, his voice softening, yet still carrying an invisible pressure. Track, I'm not asking to steal your family's secret recipe. Delicious pickled onions kept hidden in your home will only be known to your family. But if you know how to use them in the right place and for the right person, the blessings will spread and you too will benefit. Track lowered his head, silent for a long moment, then looked up at the altar where his deceased wife's portrait hung. Finally, he sighed. Master Bao, it's not like that. I beg to keep this a secret. If fate allows, you will know for yourself later. That answer, half a refusal and half a hint, left Mr. Bao feeling frustrated. But frustrated as he was, it wasn't appropriate to make a scene on someone's death anniversary. Mr. Bao could only force a faint smile and nod. Very well. I won't force you to reveal your secret, but these pickled onions truly are rare. Track the carpenter quickly poured more wine, his voice seemingly trying to smooth things over. Please, Master Bao, have more to enjoy the meal. It's thanks to your past kindness that I am where I am today. Mr. Bao did not reply, only remained silent. In his mind, calculations had begun to churn. He started comparing the pickled mustard greens at his house with Old Man Track's pickled onions, and the upcoming visit of the high-ranking official, and the geomancer's words about their family's blessings having reached their limit. All these scattered pieces seemed to be leading to a connection that Mr. Bao had yet to fully grasp. Returning home, Mr. Bao had no mind for his ledgers or drinking tea. The strange, delicious taste of the pickled onions lingered on his tongue. Lying down, Mr. Bao tossed and turned, unable to sleep. In his mind, he saw the image of the official sitting on the daybed on the first day of Tet, picking up a pickled onion, his eyes suddenly changing as he recognized the familiar taste of his poor childhood. Everything became vividly clear. In the middle of the night, Mr. Bao sat up, threw on a robe, and paced his chamber. Finally, he lowered his voice and said, My dear, those pickled onions from Old Man Track's house, do you know how delicious they are? Mrs. Bao turned in surprise to look at her husband. I've heard you praise them a lot, but they're just pickled onions. Why are you so bothered by them? Mr. Bao then huffed softly. You don't understand, dear. The official is coming to celebrate Tet, and he comes from a family of pickled onion sellers. If our feast has that dish, and it tastes just like the old days, one bite of those onions will be worth more than 10 letters of persuasion. Mrs. Bao was silent for a while, then slowly said, But Old Man Track said it's a family secret. Why would he just give it away? Mr. Bao then gave a cynical smile. A secret is only a secret if someone keeps it. How often do the poor refuse the requests of the wealthy and powerful? With that, Mr. Bao waved his hand as if the matter was settled. He lay back down, but the corners of his mouth still curled into a calculating smile. The next morning, when Miss still clung faintly to the grass, Mr. Bao sent a servant to invite Old Man Track the carpenter to his house, stating he had something to discuss. Old Man Track heard this, a feeling of unease stirring within him, but he tidied his clothes, grabbed his walking stick, and went over. As he stepped into the courtyard, Mr. Bow greeted him with a warm, hearty smile. "Ah, Track, you're here? Come in, have some tea and rest." Old Man Track bowed, his voice humble. "Master Bow called for me, so I dared not come." After pouring a cup of tea, Mr. Bow went straight to the point without beating around the bush. He set down his teacup and looked directly at Track. "Those pickled onions I ate at your house yesterday, they truly are a rare delicacy. I want your family to pickle a jar for my household." Track flinched slightly. "Oh, that matter." Old Man Track stammered, his hands clasped together, clearly hesitant. Mr. Bow leaned forward, his voice slow but forceful. "I'm not asking for it for free. Name your price. And besides, you're only pickling onions for my family to eat during Tet. You're not passing on your trade to the whole world, so there's no fear of disobeying your ancestors." Track swallowed, his gaze fixed on the tiled floor. "Respectfully, Master Bow, it's not that I'm being stingy or greedy. It's just that my ancestors instructed us to keep that pickling method a secret. I fear I would commit a sin if I made it for outsiders." Mr. Bow's brow furrowed. "Am I an outsider? For all these years you've worked for my family, have I ever treated you poorly?" "No, sir. Master Bow has been very kind to me." "Then consider this a favor for me just this once. Just one jar, and after Tet, consider the matter closed." Old Man Track remained silent for a very long time. Finally, he sighed, his voice soft. "Very well, if Master Bow insists, I will do it, but I will only pickle them for you. The method itself I must keep secret. Please, Master Bow, don't make it difficult for me." Mr. Bow then laughed heartily. "Good, I only need the jar of pickled onions for Tet. The secret is yours, I wouldn't dare interfere." Track bowed his head, as if a great weight had been lifted. That afternoon, before the sun had fully set, the sound of calling could be heard. A servant ran to Old Man Track's house, who was already waiting outside. Behind him was a large earthenware jar, its mouth sealed tightly with dried banana leaves and bamboo ties, resting on a bamboo carrying pole. Though rustic, it was surprisingly large, making Old Man Track and his accompanying grandson sweat profusely. Mr. Bow stepped out, looked at the jar, and frowned. "Why is the jar so big?" Track set down the pole, panting. "Sir, these onions need to be pickled in large quantities to be truly delicious. Besides, a small jar wouldn't hold enough *yin-yang energy." Mr. Bow bent down and gently tapped the side of the jar. A deep, resonant thud echoed. "It's so heavy, you must have bought a lot of onions, then?" Track waved his hand dismissively. "No, Master Bow, it wasn't much at all. The onions in the jar have been sun-dried and dew-kissed, and I've cooked them meticulously." "But these pickled onions can't be eaten right away." Mr. Bow looked at Old Man Track with a hint of suspicion. "Can't be eaten right away? What do you mean?" Track lowered his voice and explained slowly. "According to my family's ancestral secret, for the pickled onions to be truly delicious, they must be buried in the earth. These onions need to be buried underground to absorb the *yin-yang energy. Only then, when they're unearthed, will they be crisp, sweet, without pungency, and perfectly preserved." Hearing this, Mr. Bow felt a slight shiver, but his curiosity outweighed his unease. "Buried in the earth like burying wine?" Track nodded. "Yes, much like that. The earth retains heat and energy. If not buried, the pickled onions will only be half as good." Mr. Bow was silent for a moment, then turned and called to a servant. "Dig a hole for me in the back garden right away and bury this jar there." Mrs. Bow, walking out from inside the house, was startled to hear this. "Burying the jar in the ground, do we need to consult an auspicious day, dear?" Mr. Bow waved his hand. "It's just a jar of pickled onions. It's not disturbing a grave, so there's no need to consult a day." Track, standing nearby, added softly, "Yes, Master Bow, remember to bury it in a cool, less frequented spot. That would be better." The servants quickly dug a deep hole in the garden near the old banana trees. The jar was slowly lowered into the ground, and layers of earth were carefully refilled, then smoothed over. When the task was done, Track stood watching for a while, his expression somewhat somber. Mr. Bow now dusted off his hands, clearly pleased. "We can dig it up and eat it in 2 days, right?" "Yes, on the 30th day of the lunar calendar, it will be ready. If dug up too early, the onions will be too pungent. If dug up too late, I fear they will spoil." Mr. Bow nodded. "All right, don't worry. Once this is done, I won't forget your kindness." Old Man Track bowed without speaking. Before accepting the 3 strings of cash as payment and leaving with his grandson, he cast one last glance back at the banana trees. his eyes revealing an expression difficult to decipher. A mixture of worry and as if he had just crossed a boundary whose consequences he himself was unsure of. As for Mr. Bao, after Track the carpenter had left, he remained standing in the sun-drenched garden, his eyes fixed on the freshly covered earth, his heart filled with exultation. In his mind, all he could see was the image of the official smiling at the Tet feast, savoring the pickled onions, and his son's career path seemingly clearing before his eyes, more vivid than ever. That afternoon, the sky was still bathed in a faint sunlight, as the gentle breeze rustled through the old beetle nut palms, creating whispering sounds. Mr. Bao sat comfortably on an old daybed in the main hall. He leisurely picked up a hot teacup, took a sip, and looked out into the courtyard, his heart filled with contentment, murmuring old sayings to himself. In the midst of this peace, Mr. Bao suddenly heard loud, insistent barking coming from the back garden. At first, he thought it was Inky, his dog, chasing after rats or insects, so he didn't pay much attention. But then the barking became more frantic, more urgent. Amidst those agitated barks, Mr. Bao also heard the dog's claws scratching frantically at the ground. Mr. Bao frowned, turning his head towards the back garden, a question forming in his mind. His family's dogs were usually well-behaved. He had never known them to bark so much. Mr. Bao put down his teacup, stood up, and grabbed the bamboo staff propped against a pillar, swinging it a few times, making the air crackle. He walked briskly to the back garden. The afternoon sun, filtering through the tiled roof, cast alternating patterns of light and shadow on the rows of old banana trees. As soon as he looked, Mr. Bao was startled to see Inky, tail wagging, nose buried in the earth, its front paws furiously digging. What shocked Mr. Bao even more was that the dog was digging precisely where he had buried the earthenware jar. Mr. Bao's face contorted in anger. He clutched his staff. "You cursed beast, are you trying to ruin my plans?" Gritting his teeth, Mr. Bao angrily rushed forward, swinging the bamboo staff fiercely at the dog. He aimed straight for its back, striking with all his might, making the dog yelp loudly. Mr. Bao glared towards the side house, where the servants were eating. "You damned useless servants, is anyone there? Get your faces out here." From the kitchen, a startled servant boy rushed out, holding a kindling stick. Seeing Mr. Bao's enraged face, the servant quickly bowed. "Master, you didn't call for me." Mr. Bao glared at him, then slammed the bamboo staff onto the ground near the hole. "From now on, whatever you do, keep a close eye on this spot. If that dog digs it up and spoils my work, I'll beat you senseless. Get a large basket from the kitchen and cover this hole, then put a few bricks on top." The servant nodded furiously and scurried away. A moment later, he returned with a new basket. Mr. Bao personally placed the basket over the mouth of the hole, then instructed the servant to roll a large brick onto it. Feeling satisfied that it was secure, Mr. Bao gritted his teeth and ordered, "Watch this hole with your life, do not leave it." After giving his command, he strode back towards the main house, his heart filled with hope for the lucky dish that would advance his son's career. He heard Inky still whimpering in the front yard. He brandished his staff, stomping his foot, and roared, "You cursed beast! If you dare to go near those pickled onions again, I swear to Tet I won't spare you." Just then, Mrs. Bao came out from the house. Seeing the scene, she asked, "What are you doing, looking so furious? What good is it to scold the dog now?" He turned to his wife, his voice unreasonably harsh. "What do you know, woman? Those pickled onions in the garden are not ordinary food. They are the dish that will change our luck, our family's great opportunity. Whether our son's career prospers or not, it all depends on them. And you just stand there like that." Mrs. Bao sighed and fell silent. That evening, as the rustling wind whispered through the trees, Inky the dog, unable to sleep, tried to sneak into the back garden again. But because of Mr. Bao's orders, the servant stood guard, and so Inky dared not approach. Mr. Bao sat on the veranda, his hand resting on his chin, his eyes fixed on the pickled onion jar buried in the ground, his heart a mixture of anticipation and excitement. That night, as the entire household was deep in slumber, a servant girl named Lan suddenly awoke, needing to use the latrine. The air surrounding the spacious mansion felt strangely cold. As she passed through the back garden, the servant girl was startled to see a figure huddled among the tall grass and old banana trees. Although the distance from where Lan stood to the figure wasn't too far, the dark and oppressive space made it difficult for Lan to clearly discern it. She only noticed that the shadow seemed to stretch along something that looked like a tangled mass on the ground. At first, Lan was certain it was just stray dogs or foxes trying to steal chickens or ducks. But then, along with the eerie whispering sound, the servant girl began to feel terrified when she heard the distinct sound of sobbing. A wailing cry, unmistakably that of a newborn baby, seemed to echo from some unfathomable realm, making Lan shiver. Her curiosity, however, surged powerfully. The servant girl suppressed her urge to urinate, took a deep breath, and slowly approached the strange shadow, moving towards the mound of earth in the back garden, directly towards the hole where Mr. Bao had recently buried the pickled onion jar. Lan held her breath, taking each step softly, her eyes fixed on the shadow and the tangled mass, her heart pounding. When she was about 3 feet from the hole, Lan suddenly realized that the shadow had vanished. There was no more movement, no more eerie whispering sound. The entire back garden was dark and silent, save for the rustling of the wind and the gentle clatter of leaves against each other. Lan slowly walked among the tall grass, her eyes gradually settling on the hole where the earthenware jar was buried. The large basket that Mr. Bao himself had placed there that afternoon now lay overturned on the mound of earth. The heavy brick also lay askew, as if someone had pushed it over in a hurry. Lan's heart pounded even harder, and she shivered slightly, stepping closer, her face still fixed on the hole as if drawn to it. As she got closer to the mouth of the hole, Lan gasped in horror. Around the opening, small handprints appeared. Not only that, but next to these handprints were slimy black marks, like ink stains or some sticky substance, forming trails from the hole to the outside. Lan stood frozen, her hands trembling, a cold shiver running down her spine. She had a distinct feeling that something had just appeared and then vanished right before her eyes. Lan's heart pounded, her legs trembled, as if she dared not make a sound, fearing that any noise would disturb something behind the hole that she couldn't yet comprehend. The more the servant girl looked, the more she felt a creeping dread. The small handprints around the mouth of the hole, the smudged black marks, and the overturned basketall evoked a chilling, unbelievable sensation. Without lingering, the servant girl backed away in a panic towards the side house. Just as she retreated close to the house door, her eyes accidentally flickered upwards. Lan gasped in terror once more, seeing the same strange shadow she had seen earlier, its head bent, scurrying into the main house, then disappearing behind the closed door. Panicked and terrified, Lan stumbled backward. At that moment, a cold hand reached out from behind her and clutched her shoulder. Lan screamed in fright, but before she could utter a sound, she saw the cook standing silently before her, as if she had been there all along. Before Lan could speak, the cook wailed and said, "Hey, did you see it too?" Lan looked vaguely towards the main house, where the ghostly shadow had just vanished like a wisp of smoke. The cook spoke in a hushed tone, as if afraid someone might hear, but her voice that night was trembling and haunted. "Just now, I went to the latrine outside, and when I came back through the garden, I saw the basket overturned, and that big brick was also lying around. I thought Inky had been mischievous, so, remembering Master's words, I intended to scold it. But then, you know what?" The cook gasped, like someone who had just run a long distance, and after a few more breaths, she was able to continue. "I went to examine it, and I saw a hand." "A hand? What do you mean, a hand?" "Yes, a hand. A red hand covered in blood. It crawled out of the hole, I saw it clearly, there's no mistaking it. I was so scared that I ran straight back to the courtyard." Lan listened, her whole body rigid. She tried to take a deep breath and said, "Are you sure it wasn't just the wind or shadows from the trees?" The cook then shook her head, her eyes wide. "No, I clearly saw a bloody hand. That hand was tiny, almost like a cat's paw. But it was definitely a human hand, Lan. I think I really saw a ghost." The word ghost that the cook accidentally uttered made Lan tremble with fear. "Oh God, cook, you're right, I just saw it too. It crawled out of the back garden, then went into the main house. I saw it with my own eyes disappear behind the door. There's really a ghost in this house, cook." Lan looked frantically towards the main house, gritted her teeth, and was about to rush forward, but the cook immediately pulled her back. "Where are you going?" "It's already inside, cook. I have to tell Master and Madam right away." "Are you crazy? Waking Master and Madam up in the middle of the night telling them ghost stories? You'll get a beating." At this, Lan finally stumbled back in a panic. Neither dared to utter another word. They huddled together, clutching each other tightly, in a state of utter bewilderment. Time passed heavily like this. After a long period of waiting, the 30th day of the lunar calendar, the day Mr. Bao had eagerly anticipated since the pickled onion jar was buried, finally arrived. It was just past the early morning hour of tin, and the pristine sunlight was beginning to touch all things. The night retreated, its shadows completely vanished. Filled with excitement, Mr. Bao strode into the back garden, calling for his loyal servant. He grabbed the bamboo staff from beside the banana tree, rolled up his sleeves, and with the long-handled spade began to dig the hole. As layers of damp earth were pulled up, Lan and the cook stood pressed against the house pillar, their faces tense with each strike of the spade. Mr. Bao let out a long sigh, as if releasing his nervous anticipation, and began to dig with his bare hands, aided by the servant. In less than 2 cock, a measure of time, the heavy jar was unearthed. Mr. Bao pulled a piece of red silk from his sleeve and carefully wiped away the layers of soil from the outside of the jar. In the long corridor of the side house, the servant girl Lan held her breath, clutching her chest, her face fixed on the earthenware jar. The cook, meanwhile, trembled, not daring to make a sound. After digging up the jar and wiping off the soil, Mr. Bao ordered, "You, carry this jar into the house and place it on the daybed for me. Be careful. If you break it, I'll beat you senseless." The servant bowed, acknowledging the command, and with great care and effort, carried the heavy jar of pickled onions into the house. After washing his hands, Mr. Bao also strode into the house. The atmosphere inside suddenly became heavy and solemn, as if anticipating a momentous event. Mr. Bao stepped forward and carefully unsealed the jar. The moment the lid was opened, a sour, fishy smell, mixed with a faint, unusual pungency, spread throughout the room. The scent was unlike that of ordinary pickled onions. It was strangely captivating, enveloping the entire household in an eerie, intoxicating aura. Mrs. Bao, standing beside her husband, her eyes wide, exclaimed, "My dear, why do these pickled onions have such a strange smell?" The servant boy frowned, agreeing with Mrs. Bao. "She's right, master. I also find this smell very strange." Mr. Bao, however, smiled, his eyes gleaming with the joy of seeing what he had hoped for. "What do you know, boy? These pickled onions are made with a unique, secret method. They're not ordinary pickled onions you find at the market." Mrs. Bao, standing next to him, frowned. "I think the boy is right. I don't know about any unique method, but pickled onions that smell fishy like rotten fish truly are strange." Mr. Bao chuckled softly, as if dismissing his wife's worries. "Don't be afraid, dear. The fishy smell is normal for onions that have been buried underground. Servant, get me a bowl. You'll be hooked once you taste them." He then turned to his wife. "My dear, please bring me the ladle and a small bowl." A few breaths later, the cook hurried into the house. Seeing the earthenware jar placed so prominently on the daybed, she remembered the ghostly sight she had witnessed. The cook quickly grabbed a bowl and ladle, then retreated nervously. Mr. Bao carefully opened the lid, then inserted the small bowl and ladle deep into the jar, scooping out a bowl of pickled onions. As the onions were lifted, the sour, fishy smell, combined with an earthy odor, intensified, making the entire house seem to twist in discomfort. Mr. Bao let out a long sigh, his eyes shining. Indeed, a masterpiece. 2 days of burying them underground were not in vain after all the waiting. Mrs. Bao looked at the bowl of onions with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Lan and the cook, meanwhile, glanced anxiously at the hole in the back garden where the ghostly shadow had been seen last night, then looked back at Mr. Bao. Mr. Bao slowly picked up an onion from the bowl, his eyes sparkling with delight. Under his wife's expectant gaze, Mr. Bao put the onion in his mouth and bit down firmly. A crisp, resonant crunch echoed. A very strange flavor immediately spread throughout his mouth, making his tongue tingle. Mrs. Bao, standing nearby, watched her husband chew, unable to suppress her curiosity. Without waiting for her husband to urge her, she immediately picked up an onion and looked at it closely. The small onion was smooth and shiny, with a faint purple hue mixed with ivory white, as if it had absorbed the yin-yang energy. Mrs. Bao put it in her mouth and bit gently. A crisp, resounding crunch echoed. Mrs. Bao closed her eyes, then, as if unable to contain her astonishment, exclaimed loudly, "Oh my goodness, I've eaten countless pickled onions in my life, but never have I tasted one so incredibly delicious." Mr. Bao burst into laughter, then offered an onion to the servant boy to taste. The servant was also astonished, praising its deliciousness, making Mr. Bao even more pleased. He brought the entire bowl of onions to his mouth and slowly slurped a mouthful. The harmonious blend of saltiness, tanginess, and a lingering sweet and spicy kick made him exclaim in delight. Lan and the cook stood pressed against the doorway, not daring to step forward. They watched as Mr. Bao quickly devoured the onions and slurped the brine, feeling utterly bewildered. After eating every last bit, Mr. Bao was still exuberant. He declared, 3 days of burying them underground at the right time, at the right age, with the right asterisk yin-yang asterisk energy. With this smell and this taste, our eldest son will surely never forget it. All that day, Mr. Bao beamed as if he had struck gold. As evening approached, the couple told each other to go to bed, as they still had many preparations for the ceremonies tomorrow. However, Mr. Bao had not been lying down for long when he felt a dull, uncomfortable ache in his stomach. The pain was initially slight but gradually spread throughout his sides, then down to his anus, making him hold his breath. An urgent, pressing sensation in his abdomen forced him to defecate immediately. Grabbing the oil lamp from the bedside table, he gritted his teeth and stepped out, wooden clogs clacking. The oil lamp dimly lit the spacious main hall, leaving one corner in shadow. As he glanced towards the earthenware jar, Mr. Bao immediately gasped in shock, speechless. He quickly rubbed his eyes, for in that fleeting second, he had seen the jar's lid move on its own, as if being pushed from the inside. A sense of panic washed over him. He cautiously leaned closer to get a clearer look, but before he could touch it, a terrifying sight made Mr. Bao feel as if he had died on the spot. The entire lid, which had been resting firmly on the mouth of the jar, suddenly jumped up, then crashed loudly onto the daybed. The moment the lid fell off, a blood-red skull emerged from within the jar. The skull, no bigger than his fist, slowly rose, then gently swayed, as if dancing under the yellow lamplight. A pungent, fishy odor emanated from the jar of onions, making the air in the house feel thick and oppressive. Then, just as quickly, the skull retracted, disappearing back down. Only a muffled thud was heard, like someone pulling their feet out of muddy water. Mr. Bao let out a terrified scream and fell backward. The oil lamp in his hand flew out, hit the ground hard, and shattered with a loud clang. Mr. Bao's frantic scream woke his sleeping wife, who sprang up in a panic. She fumbled in the darkness, reaching for the wall, then frantically called her husband. The moment the bedroom door was opened, bathed in the light from the oil lamp on the ancestral altar, Mrs. Bao was horrified to see her husband lying on his back on the floor. His face was ghostly white, his mouth agape, his tongue drawn back, emitting only labored, wheezing breaths. Mrs. Bao shrieked in terror, knelt down, and vigorously shook her husband's shoulder. But before she could utter a sound, her face also turned ashen. She quickly covered her nose, overwhelmed by a foul odor that assailed her. Recoiling in horror, she was shocked to see that her husband had soiled his pants. Stepping back another pace, Mrs. Bao was half crying, half laughing. "Oh my heavens, what are you doing? It's the middle of the night, why are you screaming like that, and now you've made such a mess? The officials will be here soon and the whole house is dirty." Mr. Bao was still pale, his mouth twisted. With great difficulty, he managed to stammer, "My dear, I saw a ghost. It crawled out of the pickled onion jar." Mrs. Bao turned back in alarm, her eyes frantically scanning the room, every corner, every crack in the wall, then looked down at the jar. But strangely, in the light of the oil lamp from the altar, the pickled onion jar was exactly as it had been, perfectly normal. The lid was still tightly closed, with no sign of being pried open. Half believing, half doubting, Mrs. Bao turned to her husband. "Are you losing your mind? Where would a ghost come from? I've been with you for so many years, and I've never seen any evil spirits crawl into our house. Come on, go change your clothes. The officials will be here soon. Do you want this smell to stink up the entire room?" Mr. Bao was incoherent, unsure what to say. Finally, he gritted his teeth and went to the back of the house to wash up, then returned to the bedroom, his mind still in turmoil. Mr. Bao lay down for a while, then sprang up in a panic again. He gently nudged his wife and whispered urgently, "It's so strange, my dear. I swear, at that moment I saw a human head emerge from the lid." Mrs. Bao looked at her husband, then snapped, "You're truly strange. Who would crawl into a pickled onion jar? You must have been half asleep and imagined it." "You were dreaming," Mr. Bao retorted. "I wasn't asleep then, so how could I be dreaming? I must examine that jar thoroughly. There must be something strange about it." Mrs. Bao then pulled her husband's hand back down, shushing him. "Don't be silly. It's the middle of the night. Are you trying to scare people, wanting to examine the pickled onion jar? We both clearly saw it lying in its place just now. How could anyone have crawled inside and then closed the lid again? Go to sleep. It's past midnight." Mr. Bao gritted his teeth, not knowing how to explain, so he just remained silent. The room returned to an unsettling stillness. The next morning, faint sunlight streamed through the window cracks, illuminating the floor, where the pickled onion jar still sat prominently on the daybed. Mr. Bao still felt a lingering unease, his heart pounding, his body trembling from the events of the previous night. He sat on the daybed, rubbing his stomach, his eyes distractedly watching the jar, as if fearing that at any moment the ghostly head from last night might reappear. But strangely, the pickled onion jar was still normal. It remained tightly sealed, clean on the outside, the clear pickling brine shimmering gently, as if inviting him. The reassuring presence of the jar temporarily calmed Mr. Bao, though his heart was still filled with worry and anticipation. After a moment of distraction, Mr. Bao decided to go to the kitchen, grab the thick wooden ladle, and return to the jar. He plunged the ladle into the jar and stirred vigorously, but the round-mouthed earthenware jar was tightly packed with pickled onions. No matter how hard Mr. Bao tried, he saw nothing unusual. Mrs. Bao came out of the bedroom and saw her husband still holding the ladle, his eyes fixed on the jar, his mind still restless. She sighed, cleared her throat, and said sharply, "What are you doing sitting there, lost in thought? Go wash your face. I need to tell the servants to prepare breakfast. What's there to keep looking at?" Mr. Bao nodded, suppressing his unease, and walked towards the back of the house. Mrs. Bao also went to the veranda and called the cook to set the table. That morning's breakfast was laid out: hot steamed rice, a bowl of braised pork, a plate of stir-fried vegetables, and a bowl of bamboo shoot soup swimming in oil. Seeing the ladle her husband had left on the daybed, Mrs. Bao casually opened the jar and scooped a bowl of pickled onions onto the table. After washing up, Mr. Bao staggered back into the house. As he saw the bowl of pickled onions on the table, a flicker of apprehension crossed his mind, but he managed to suppress it, not daring to speak. Mrs. Bao, seeing her husband still hesitant, quickly picked up an onion and put it in his bowl. "Eat, my dear, they're just pickled onions." Mr. Bao nodded, his hand trembling as he picked up an onion. The ivory-white onion, interspersed with faint purple, still gleamed as it had yesterday, and its sweet wine-like flavor blended with a subtle tanginess, still alluring. But as Mr. Bao brought the onion to his mouth, his eyes widened, his heart pounded erratically, and a wave of terror, like an electric shock, ran through his spine. On the table now, it was no longer the appetizing bowl of pickled onions. Instead, before his eyes appeared a pile of wet, glistening eyeballs, darting their gazes directly at him. Mr. Bao shrieked in horror, immediately threw the onion away and recoiled, clutching himself. His scream startled Mrs. Bao, making her tremble and drop the rice bowl, her eyes wide. "Oh my goodness, what's wrong with you, dear? Why have you been screaming so much since last night?" Mr. Bao shivered violently, pointing at the bowl of onions on the ground, his eyes fixed on it. Mrs. Bao stared at the table, seeing nothing. She then looked at her husband, her voice gentle. "What's wrong, dear? Are you hallucinating? Those are just pickled onions in front of you, aren't they?" Mr. Bao, though not fully recovered, still forced himself to gather all his courage and look down. But the bowl of pickled onions still lay there. There were absolutely no eyeballs. Mr. Bao stammered, pointing at the spot again, trying to see. Before the shock could fully subside, his mind was torn apart by a terrifying phenomenon. As he bent down to look closely, the liquid in the bowl suddenly changed color. The pale yellow, tinged with brown, instantly turned blood red, like fresh blood. Mr. Bao's mouth dropped open, his eyes wide with terror. He sprang to his feet and quickly scrambled onto the daybed. But Mr. Bao's horror didn't stop there. As he stumbled off the daybed and looked back, oh no, inside the bowl of onions, countless wriggling maggots had appeared. The repulsive maggots crawled up and down, weaving through the layers of onions. Their bodies were plump and swollen. Mr. Bao shrieked again and fell backward. Meanwhile, Mrs. Bao sat frozen in place. This horror frightened Mr. Bao so much that he nearly lost his mind. In his head, the image of the bowl of onions transforming into eyeballs, the brine turning blood red, and the plump, wriggling maggots in the bowl all merged into one terrifying illusion, making him unable to distinguish between reality and nightmare. But no, fate was not yet done with him. As he looked up frantically at his wife, Mr. Bao was shocked once more to see the jar lid behind his wife suddenly rise. Then, from within the jar, the ghostly head from last night slowly emerged again. This sight left Mr. Bao no time to think. He gritted his teeth, grabbed the jar, and flung himself onto the daybed, kicking the jar over, sending it crashing to the floor. A very loud clatter echoed, followed by several servants from the side house rushing over in a panic. On the floor lay countless scattered pickled onions, and right on top of the glistening, pungent brine was something that made everyone present scream in horror and terror. It was a fetus, still with its umbilical cord. Its flesh was pale and bruised, as if it had just been removed from its mother's womb. Its tiny hands were clasped, and the umbilical cord was coiled around it like a tangled rope. Mrs. Bao, upon seeing this, fainted immediately. Mr. Bao was so terrified that he collapsed, his eyes wide and vacant. And it was in that very moment that Mr. Bao realized that the object covering the fetus's belly was not the pale umbilical cord, but a circular string. A string that held a small, curved, dark yellow wooden fragment, etched with two characters. Ha-van, Ha-van. Mr. Bao collapsed into a sitting position on the floor, his face ashen, his mouth twisted. His mind reeled, his heart pounding erratically. Ha-van, how could Mr. Bao forget that name? She was a woman who had quietly suffered, nearing her third trimester, a relative in old man Track's family who had been a thorn in Mr. Bao's side just 5 days ago. That morning, Mr. Bao had risen to go to the main house for a crucial matter. As he opened the large main door, Mr. Bao was startled to see Ha-van standing there, as if she had been waiting for ages. The moment she saw him, Ha-van burst into tears. "Oh my goodness, why have you been avoiding me, coming home but not daring to call? I just wanted to tell you this news, I'm pregnant with your child." Hearing this, Mr. Bao gasped in utter shock and incoherence. For the past month, seeing his mistress show signs of pregnancy, Mr. Bao had tried to escape. Yet today, Ha-van had sought him out here. If this matter were to be revealed, Mr. Bao feared his own reputation would be ruined, bringing shame upon his family and disrupting the entire village. Driven by ambition, desire for fame, and societal prejudice, he had decisively given her some money, promising to take her in as his second wife after Tet. But deep within Mr. Bao's heart, cruel calculations were at play. After reassuring her and making all sorts of promises, Mr. Bao quickly told her, "Now, my dear, go back to the village for a while. After Tet, I will certainly bring the beetle nuts and marry you. If you love me, don't make a scene here. It will bring shame to both of us." Ha-van, with tears in her eyes, reluctantly agreed and sadly walked away. Immediately, Mr. Bao rushed into the servants' quarters and secretly called his loyal servant, ordering him to secretly follow Ha-van with a cold, ruthless command. "Kill her, and make her disappear from my sight." After the servant returned with the news that he had secretly taken care of Ha-van, Mr. Bao believed that everything was settled, that his family's honor and future were secured. But fate was not so kind as to let the wicked go unpunished. Ha-van did not die. After 4 fatal stabs, she, with her last ounce of strength, dragged herself to the stream, where she coincidentally met Mr. Phong, her uncle, who was gathering firewood in the forest. Mr. Phong, after hearing his niece recount the entire story of her pregnancy, including Mr. Bao's heartless order to have her killed. From the moment Ha-van, his beloved niece, died in his arms, Mr. Phong was consumed by hatred. After burying his niece by the stream, Mr. Phong solemnly returned to the village. Near the old beetle nut tree, he saw Lan and the cook from Mr. Bao's house talking. Having known them for a long time, Mr. Phong stopped to exchange a few pleasantries. From a few of their words, he overheard snippets about Mr. Bao's ambitious plans, about the provincial official coming to celebrate Tet at his house, and especially about Mr. Bao painstakingly preparing a special pickled onion dish. This was meant as a bribe to curry favor with the official, hoping to pave the way for his son's career. At this point, Mr. Phong clenched his jaw and wrung his robe. In that instant, all the disparate pieces in his mind connected, forming a clear picture. Ha-van, his niece, had died tragically by the stream. Her child was rejected, her pregnancy dismissed with false promises. Everything was now laid bare. Mr. Bao's ambition, the official path he wanted to forge for his son, was being built on the blood and flesh of his own kin. Mr. Phong did not utter another word. He nodded gravely at the 2 women and walked away. But in his deep-set eyes, the dark light of resentment, which had been simmering before, now burned intensely. The profound hatred he had not dared to name now had an answer, a form, and a destination. On the night of the 28th of Tet, as the entire village drifted into restless sleep, Mr. Phong quietly left his house, carrying a sickle-like knife, its pale light cutting through the forest, creating fleeting patterns of light and shadow. He carried several joss sticks, a small wooden pole, and a dirt clod. He went to the deserted stream, where only the chirping of insects and the muffled crunch of his footsteps on dry leaves could be heard. Reaching the spot, Mr. Phong stopped at the mound of earth he had carefully prepared hours earlier. He trembled as he lit the joss sticks, clasped his hands, and bowed 3 times, his lips murmuring Ha-van's name in the cold wind. The incense smoke swirled for a moment, then dispersed into the damp air, like the breath of the departed. Mr. Phong did not cry. He just stood there for a moment, then silently took up his spade and began to dig. The earth was still soft and loose. Each spadeful came up heavier than the last time. When the digging was done, Mr. Phong bent down for a long time, his eyes darkening. He did everything in silence, his movements swift and practiced, like a skilled artisan at work, not letting emotion overwhelm him. After cutting open the deceased's abdomen, Mr. Phong carefully extracted a crimson fetus, then meticulously wrapped it in a piece of cloth and placed it in a small earthenware pot. When finished, he refilled the earth as before, covering it with dry leaves to restore the original appearance of the grave. The stream still flowed, the lantern light still flickered, but the surrounding space seemed heavier and colder. Mr. Phong carried the pot and walked back to the courtyard, placing it carefully in a sheltered spot. His every step was a silent vow. In that moment, he knew clearly that the pickled onions Mr. Bao was eagerly awaiting would lead to a different path directly to retribution. After placing the fetus into the earthenware jar, Mr. Phong stood in silence for a long time. The jar, wide-mouthed and narrow-necked, its glaze weathered by time, was dark inside like a small cave. Mr. Phong did not look directly into it, only wiped his brow with his sleeve, his breathing heavy, as if he had just climbed a long, steep slope. He began to pickle the onions with slow, deliberate movements, chillingly precise. The onions chosen beforehand were all small, plump, with pristine white outer layers and faint purple hues, still carrying the scent of sun and dew. He carefully peeled each one, washed them clean with cold well water, then let them drain on a tray. The coarse sea salt was carefully sun-dried by Mr. Phong. The pickling brine was boiled from well water, with a touch of fish sauce and a little rock sugar to soften the flavor. With his exceptional skill in pickling onions, Mr. Phong began to layer the onions in the jar. Each layer of onions was followed by a layer of salt. He worked with steady hands, his movements neither hurried nor trembling. Only his eyes were dark and deeply sunken, as if he was concentrating all his mental energy on suppressing something beneath. When the first layer of onions covered the bottom of the jar, Mr. Phong paused for a moment, as if listening, but there was no sound, only the faint rustle of water passing through the onions, like a very soft sigh. He continued to layer the second and third layers, the jar gradually filled, the onions submerged in the cool brine, then settling down. Mr. Phong gritted his teeth and sealed the lid, lining the mouth of the jar with dried banana leaves and tying it tightly with bamboo strips. Before making the final knot, he gently pressed his hand onto the jar, as if pushing down everything that was buried inside. Blood debt must be repaid with blood. Mr. Phong mumbled in a hoarse voice, unclear whether he was speaking to himself or to the deceased. When he was done, Mr. Phong carried the jar of pickled onions to the courtyard and carefully placed it in a sheltered, windless spot. The very next day, Mr. Phong sent word to invite Mr. Bao to his house for the death anniversary meal, and that was when the thread of ill-fated revenge had tightened like a noose, ready to exact its due. Returning to the present situation, Mr. Bao collapsed onto the floor, his hands trembling, unable to avert his gaze from the fetus and the small wooden fragment etched with the name. Utterly terrified, his mind reeling from repeated shocks, he wanted to scream loudly, but the sound caught in his throat. A cold shiver ran down his spine, his heart pounded erratically, and sweat poured from him. Mr. Bao didn't know whether to cry or to flee this horrific reality. The river of memories flooded back, from the day he was captivated by Ha Van's youthful beauty, to his empty promises, his deceit, and his cruel order to have her killed. His crime now lived, pulsating, in the very pickled onions he had hoped would curry favor with the official. The feelings of fear, remorse, and self-loathing all raged within him like a furious storm, overwhelming his mind. Mr. Bao wanted to scream, to run, to wail, but his hands trembled. The pungent, sour pickled onions, the cold, fishy fetus all merged into a horrific chaos that he could not control. Everything flooded his brain, making his head spin. Then, in that moment of deranged consciousness, Mr. Bao again heard the wailing cry of a child from the back garden, a ghostly sound echoing as if an invitation from the depths of hell. Mr. Bao, ignoring his unconscious wife and the servants who were retching and vomiting, slowly picked up a shard of the broken jar with his hand, the hand that had committed so many sins. Mr. Bao let out a cackling laugh. The ill-fated shard in his hand, as if controlled by an invisible evil force, slowly moved to his throat, slicing a deep cut. That year would have been a very prosperous Tet for Mr. Bao's family, but he could no longer feel it. From the tragic wound, blood gushed out. He began to collapse beside the fetus, convulsing for a moment, then died instantly on the spot.